Sometimes we don't know the answer to something, and that is perfectly normal. But at times, we want to avoid saying the words, I don't know. And in British culture, avoiding those words is pretty common. So in this lesson, we're talking about the phrase, I don't know, a phrase that is perfectly clear in meaning, yet surprisingly rare to hear said directly in British English. Why? Well, because in British culture, how you say something often matters more than what you say. And saying the words, I don't know, can feel a bit blunt, final, or a bit vulnerable depending on the situation. So in this lesson, we're looking at when it's actually okay to say the words, I don't know. We'll also look at why British people often avoid saying it. We're going to look at some alternatives with context. And if you want to learn even more about this lesson, there is a free PDF that you can download. All you need to do to get that PDF is click on the link down below. Hello, you wonderful people. Welcome to English Right Now. My name is Roy, your British English teacher. Now, I've been a teacher of English for nearly 15 years, and over that time, I've helped thousands of students just like you from all over the world with things like pronunciation in a modern British RP accent, talking about British culture and British English in general. So if that sounds cool, please do consider subscribing to this channel and liking this lesson. But now let's talk about those words, I don't know. Let's start here. It is not wrong to say, I don't know. I'm not saying that. In fact, in certain settings, it's the best thing to say. For example, academic or professional contexts, the honesty of saying, I don't know, can build credibility. In customer service or teaching, admitting that you don't know something yet, that's an important word, yet, can actually build trust. And in relationships, it shows humility or openness. There's nothing wrong with saying things like, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. Or, good question, I'm not sure actually, but I'll look into it. In these cases, the key is what comes next. British speakers, they often soften the phrases or follow it up with something constructive like, I'll find out for you. Or, I'm not sure, but I'll look into it. These kind of things, showing that you're willing to learn or make an effort to find out the information that that person wants. But we often add these constructive things because saying the words, I don't know, on its own can feel like closing the door. It can sometimes feel like slamming the door on a conversation, shutting that conversation down. And British communication, in general, often prefers to keep the door slightly open, even when you're unsure. So this idea of looking into it keeps the conversation alive. Now, I will say at this point, if somebody stops you in the street and asks for directions and you have no idea where that place is, you don't need to keep the conversation going. You can simply say, sorry, I don't know. If you want to be a bit constructive, maybe you could say, oh, maybe you could ask that person if there's an official there, but don't try to be overly helpful when you don't know the answer to something. And I will say as well, the word sorry softens the blow. We often say when somebody's asking for directions, sorry, I'm not from here, or I don't live here. But now let's go a bit deeper. Why do British people often avoid saying the phrase, I don't know? Why do we try and just get away from that simple, direct phrase? Well, to understand that, we need to look at two quite powerful forces in British communication. First up, we have politeness and face saving. We've talked a lot on the channel about the politeness theory and the idea of face. British politeness is rooted in the idea of protecting everybody's sense of dignity, not embarrassing them. It's what sociolinguists call face, this idea of social standing. So saying something directly, like, I don't know, it can feel a bit, well, first of all, unhelpful. It can feel a bit final, and it can even feel a bit dismissive, depending on the tone. So instead of hearing somebody say, I don't know, you might hear them say, I'm not quite sure actually, or I'd have to think about that. Now, the aim isn't to lie. What we're doing is keeping things open-ended, and it's avoiding seeming uncaring or like we don't really care or we're indifferent. And it signals a willingness to help that person or engage, even without certainty. And the second point is uncertainty avoidance. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Some cultures are uncomfortable with uncertainty and they demand clear answers. Even if they don't know, they would sooner say, I don't know. But British culture tends to not only accept uncertainty, but at times they embrace it, as long as it's wrapped in charm, humour, or understatement. So rather than confidently and directly saying, I don't know, many Brits will say, will use humour to sidestep the discomfort. They'll offer a guess, but disclaim it. Well, it might be that, but I'm not sure. And they will gently deflect while keeping things socially smooth. It's not about pretending to know. It's about managing the vibe of not knowing. That's the key to British culture when admitting we don't know something. And I mentioned IELTS a moment ago. One of the readings, the questions are true, false, or not given. Now, a lot of cultures are quite happy with true or false. It's either right or wrong. But this not given means that the answer is not to be found in the text. Now, some cultures are pretty comfortable with this, but I found a lot of students from certain cultures couldn't really grasp the concept of not given. In the text, the answer is not there, but they would look for the answer. If they couldn't find the answer, they would declare it as false. There is a difference between not given and false. Let me give you an example. My name is Roy, and I'm a British English teacher, and I love helping people who are learning English. I also love building Lego. I'm from the UK, and I live on the Isle of Wight. So, true, false, not given. My name is Roy. Yeah, that's true. I said, I'm Roy, or my name is Roy. True, false, not given. I hate building Lego. False. I said, I love building Lego. So it's the opposite. True, false, not given. I was born on the Isle of Wight. Not given. I said that I live on the Isle of Wight and I'm from the UK, but that information is not there. And that's the point. You have to be comfortable with uncertainty to answer that question correctly. But now let's look at some other ways that you can say, I don't know. So here are some really common ways that British people say, I don't know, without saying, I don't know. And I'm going to put them with context, tone, and a bit of cultural insight. First up, we have, I'm not sure, to be honest. This is quite soft, sincere, and quite humble. And we use this when we want to sound helpful, but we are genuinely unsure. And this avoids sounding too final. Not quite as well, adds gentle uncertainty. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. It might be worth checking the website. Second, we have, sorry, I wouldn't like to say. So this is quite discreet and tactful. And we use this when we want to avoid making assumptions or speculating. And this suggests a kind of restraint and a respect for nuance. Is she leaving the company? I wouldn't like to say. I've only really heard rumours. So that's kind of saying, I don't know, I have heard rumours, but I'm not going to say yes or no because I'm not 100% sure. It shows a bit of discretion. Number 3, search me. This one's quite casual and it's quite humorous, but be careful, it could sound a bit flippant if you don't show that it's obviously a joke. And we would use this one more in informal settings when something's a bit weird or a bit puzzling. And it signals this idea of confusion while keeping it quite light. So if somebody says, why does the bus always come early when I'm late? Search me. Number 4, I haven't the foggiest. This is a little bit old-fashioned, but you do still hear it a lot, and it's quite charming, to be honest. It's a light-hearted way to express total confusion, and it adds a bit of character and even a bit of self-deprecating humour here. It's like, what does this button do? No idea, I haven't got the foggiest. Number 5, don't ask me. This one could be quite cheeky, sarcastic, or playful, but the tone of your voice is really important, because if you get the tone wrong, it can sound a bit rude. In fact, it can sound incredibly rude. This is when we feel completely disconnected from the topic, and it shares a kind of emotional exasperation. It's not just information. So maybe a colleague says to you, why have we got another meeting now? Maybe you could say, oh, don't ask me, I just work here. It's quite flippant, but it's all about tone, especially if you add a noise like, don't ask me, that kind of noise. Now, if somebody asks you a question and you say quite flatly, don't ask me, that sounds really rude. So it's all about, don't ask me. Maybe do it with a little bit of a laugh as well. Number 6, your guess is as good as mine. This one is quite honest and it shows collaboration. And it's when both people are equally confused. So it shifts, I don't know, to we don't know. So maybe somebody says, do you think the train's going to be delayed again? Your guess is as good as mine. In other words, We're kind of in this together, and we both don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Number 7, beats me. This one shows mild frustration, but it is quite humorous. And it's used often in casual situations when something is totally illogical. And it does show that kind of emotional reaction, not just a lack of knowledge. So, mate, why is there a sofa in the lift? I don't know. Beats me. It's almost like you have been defeated by the lack of knowledge. Number 8, I couldn't say really. This is quite neutral and quite polished, and it's used when you're unsure, but you want to remain quite respectful. So it sort of suggests a thoughtful distance rather than ignorance. Do you think they'll win the election? I couldn't say really. Number 9 is not off the top of my head. This one is quite smart and it's quite measured. And it's when you might know, but not instantly. And it suggests potential knowledge. Maybe it's going to come to you, and it's a stalling tactic. It buys time. Do you know his phone number? Not off the top of my head, no. It's like suggesting it's not instant knowledge, but I might be able to find out. And number 10, oh, God knows, or God only knows. If you want to avoid using the word God, some people say, who knows? This one is quite rhetorical, but also slightly dramatic, and it's when something feels mysterious, maybe a bit absurd, and completely out of your control. And it plays into that sort of dry humour, that British dry humour. Why do we always get rain on bank holidays? Oh, God knows, or God only knows. It shows that kind of dry nature. Or instead, who knows? Listen to my tone of voice. So I'm going to give you a few bonus ones. I'll have to get back to you on that. This one is quite common, maybe in the classroom or in a professional setting. So if we don't know something, but we intend to do some research and then tell that person later, we'll say, I'll have to get back to you on that. So it's like saying, I don't know right now, but I will know in the future. And when I do know, I will tell you. I'll have to get back to you on that. The next bonus one is the jury's still out on that one. So this one basically means there's no final decision or no decision has been made. And there's still time for the real information to be revealed. So it's adding this element of, I'm not sure about that one. So do you think he's a good boss? The jury's still out on that one. It's like saying, I don't know, but I'm yet to make my judgment. Another bonus would be, I haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue is quite direct, but it's also quite funny. Like, do you know what time the train leaves? I haven't got a clue, sorry. And an alternative to this one would be, I haven't got a Scooby. This one is based in Cockney rhyming slang. Scooby, Scooby-Doo, it rhymes with clue, so it's saying the same thing. Sorry, I haven't got a Scooby. Now remember, you can learn even more in a free PDF that you can download by clicking the link down below. But what do all these phrases have in common? Well, they all avoid sounding too abrupt. They don't just suddenly cut off communication. They include a social buffer, and they reflect an attitude as much as a fact. And it tells us in British English, not knowing isn't the problem. Being too direct about it might be, because in British culture, being a bit ambiguous can be polite. And humour softens vulnerability. If we use self-deprecation, and I make a joke about myself, then you can't really take that power away from me and make a joke that I've already made. And it also shows us that understatement preserves dignity. So the next time you want to say, I don't know, without saying the words, I don't know, you have lots of options to choose from. If you want to sound professional, you can say, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. If you want to stay a bit casual, you can just say, search me. If you want to show you're engaged, even without answers, you can say, not off the top of my head, let me check. The trick is not just learning phrases, though. It's learning when and why they're used. Language is culture. And that's why, on this channel, I teach both. If you found this lesson useful, please do remember there is a free PDF for you to download just by clicking the link down below. Please do subscribe for more videos on real British English, and comment down below, what's your favourite way to say, I don't know? Thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next lesson.